Hi, everybody. Welcome again to Ivy English. I'm Bruce.
I'm Angela.
And I'm Wesley.
Today, June 11th, is the second day of our lesson called The History of Poker and Playing Cards.
我们的中文标题是你从未想过的扑克牌。
Yesterday, we learned about the origin of the game and how it spread throughout the United States and actually throughout the world as well. And today we're going to be looking at more aspects of this, probably the most famous card game, at least in the United States. Of course, bridge players would beg to differ, but I like bridge.
Yeah.
I like poker too. So.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a crazy eights kind of gal. So.
Go fish.
Go fish.
好，这个 beg to differ 哈，是刚刚 Bruce 老师用了一个很好的片语哈，这 beg to differ 就是他会有不同的意见。那字面上的意思就是他会哀求说我意见不同，你要让我提出我的意见，我的看法跟你不同啊，所以你讲怎样怎样，那另外一个人 may beg to differ， 就他可能会有不同的意见。
Okay, I'm going to read through today's lesson. And, of course, then we will go over it again, sentence by sentence for you. When playing a game with rules based on the rank and suit of cards, it would make sense to have a standardized set of cards. The 52-card pack that you see used in most card games is a French-suited pack. The deck is divided up into 4 suits, each represented by a different icon. These are the black-colored clubs, also called clovers, and spades, plus the red-colored hearts and diamonds. Each suit contains the same 13 ranks, which are an ace, the numbers 2 through 10, and 3 face cards, the jack, queen, and king. If you haven't closely inspected a deck of cards, you may assume the face cards are identical. That is, the jack of hearts is the same as the jack of clubs. Of course, a quick inspection shows that this is not so. In fact, the slight differences between the face cards have earned them some common nicknames. There are the one-eyed jacks, featured in the spade and heart suits, which are seen in profile. There is also the suicide king, or the king of hearts, named for the sword that appears to be piercing his head. You may even have heard more familiar names for the cards, like David, the king of spades, or Alexander, the king of clubs. This goes back to an old French custom of naming face cards after royal figures, both real and fictional. As playing cards weren't mass-produced, the names changed from deck to deck. However, some names appeared with a certain degree of frequency, like Charlemagne, the king of hearts, and Lancelot, the jack of clubs. So, why aren't names associated with the cards today? The French Revolution. It brought an end to the monarchy and this habit.
So, when playing a game with rules based on the rank and the suit of cards, it would make sense to have a standardized set of cards, because if the rules depend on what the cards look like, then the cards have to be the same from game to game. That's what we mean by a standardized set, that every set of cards that people play with is the same as every other set.
就是标准化的 a standardized set of cards， 就是一副标准化的牌，也就是大家的牌都是这个样子的。好，所以这个句子他说，当你玩一个游戏，那这个游戏的规则呢是 based on the rank and suit of cards， 它的规则是根据这个 rank 就是等级或者级别，好，就这个哪一张牌大哪一张牌小这样的级别，还有the suit of cards， 这个还根据牌的花色所以你的牌的游戏的规则是根据牌的大小还有根据牌的花色来玩的话呢， it would make sense to have a standardized set of cards。Make sense 就是合理所以你要有一副这个标准化的牌这样是很合理的。
The 52-card pack that you see used in most card games is a French-suited pack.
Does that mean they wear French suits?
Royal French suits. I don't know. Depends on your pack, which we also call a deck, D-E-C-K.
I think what they mean by French suited, because that's the first time I've seen this term, but I think what they mean by that is that the suits, the clubs, hearts, diamonds, and spades came from the French game and not from other games.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah. 好，这个地方这 French suited 好，这个字呢，刚刚这个 Angel 老师开玩笑，那他们是不是穿的这个法国的这个套装呢？那事实上这个 suit 应该是跟那个花色有关的那个 suit， 所以这个地方应该是它的花色是法国的花色的意思。
So they're wearing the French colors. No, that's not true either. That sounds like a flag.
Yeah.
But I mean, literally their suits are from France.
好，所以原本这个扑克牌的那个花色其实来自法国了啊，所以这个句子就是说，这个52张牌的这样的一个 pack 啊，这样的一个 deck， 这样的一副牌呢 ，that you see 你看到 used 被使用的，好 ，in most card games， 在大多数的牌戏里面呢，你看到大家用的那个52张牌的那样子一种牌呢，是一种法国花色的牌。
So the deck is divided up into 4 suits. There's 4 categories of cards, and each category or suit is represented by a different icon or symbol. And so, like I said, the one with 3 dots in it is called a club. And that used to confuse me as a child because a club, I understood, was like a big, thick piece of wood that you hit people with. So why is this very fancy symbol called a club? I have never satisfactorily answered this question. I'm passing my question on to you. But how do you say clubs in Chinese?
梅花。
梅花. That makes much more sense. It seems much more like the symbol is.
Yeah.
So anyways, that's the hardest one to remember because it doesn't seem at all like a club. The next one, spades, does make sense because it does kind of look like the head of a garden spade, which is a tool for digging. But what is it called in Chinese?
黑桃. It's like a peach.
Oh, you know, I can deal with that. It's like an upside-down peach. Okay.
And then peach pit.
Yeah.
The shape of the peach pit.
Sure, I'm going to go with the peach fruit, though, in my personal idiolect.
Whatever works.
Whatever works. Then the diamond, which everyone agrees on is a diamond, because a diamond is a shape that kind of transcends cultures, I think.
But we call it 方块.
Yeah, a diamond is a four-sided object, right?
Yeah.
And then the heart. The heart doesn't have anything to do with the shape of a human heart or any animal heart that I know of. However, this has got called a heart throughout centuries and
across cultures.
Across cultures as well.
好，所以这地方呢，我们看到第一句，他说这个牌呢 is divided up 被分啊 into 成为啊，所以它被分成什么呢？分成4种花色，然后呢 each 就是每一种花色 each suit represented by 由什么来代表呢？由一个不同的 icon 一个不同的图样啊来代表。所以 there are 有什么样的4种花色呢？第一个啊，前面2个是黑色的，好 the black colored 2个东西，一个是 clubs 就是我们讲的梅花。好，那刚刚 Angela 说他小时候觉得很奇怪，因为英文的 club 可以指木棍哈，用来打人的那种木棍棒子哈，所以他觉得很奇怪，这不像啊哈。不过 anyway 中文啊，这个称为梅花也跟英文的 club 没有什么关系啊，大家就觉得啊，看起来是梅花，就叫它梅花了。那这个梅花呢，这个花色也被称为三叶草哈 ，clovers。那黑色的还有除了梅花之外呢，还有桃，我们叫黑桃，那英文是 spades。然后 plus 此外还有什么呢 ？The red colored， 另外还有2种是红色的，红色一个是 hearts 心，我们叫红心，那另外一个是方块哈 ，diamonds 方块，红的方块。
Each of these 4 suits contains the same 13 ranks, which are an ace. In this case, the way they're presenting this, it represents a 1, the value of 1, the numbers 2 through 10, and 3 face cards, the jack, queen, and king. In most games of poker, 2 is the lowest card, and then ace, there's just 1 icon on it, is the highest value, higher than the king.
Which leads to the joke. In what case is 1 greater than 2?
Aha.
In a deck of cards.
Why?
Because ace is always more valuable than a 2 in most things, except in Da Lao Er, which is my favorite game right now.
OK 好，所以这个 ace 好就是 A 的这个牌，那在这个扑克牌里面它是最大的，它比 king 还要大。好，所以刚刚 Angel 老师讲那个笑话，说这个在什么样的情况之下呢？这个1啊比2大
Yeah, 1 is greater than 2.
Yeah, 1比2大，那就是一张这个 ace 就比那个2那个牌还要大。OK， 那我们看到这个句子，他说这个每一个花色呢，包括了同样的13个这个级别，就是从这个1一直到这个3张，我们叫王牌那还有一张 A 牌，所以总共13张然后呢，这个接下来他说 the number 2所以除了an ace 之外呢，还有从数字2一直到10然后还有3张的这个人头牌 face cards。那这人头牌呢，我们中文叫做骑士、皇后跟国王
Now, if you haven't closely inspected a deck of cards, if you hadn't spent any time kind of looking at the face cards, you may assume the face cards are identical. By the way, they're called face cards because they have faces on them, whereas the other cards only have numbers. And yeah, me too. I used to think as a kid, I was like, oh, they're all the same. And then one day I sat down to look at them and I realized that every suit, the drawing of the face is different for each character. And it's kind of cool.
所以如果你没有 closely 就是仔细的 inspect 就是 to examine carefully 那就是仔细的看。你如果没有仔细的看过 a deck of cards 一副牌的话 你可能会 assume 就是以为，你可能会以为说the face cards 这些人头牌 are identical 就是完全一样 exactly alike 或者 being the same.
Well, now you may have thought this, and here's an example of what you might think before you inspect them. That is, here's the example, the jack of hearts is the same as the jack of clubs. The picture of the jack might be a different color, but the picture is the same.
That is, 也就是说你会觉得这些人头牌都一样，也就是说 the jack of hearts 就是红心的骑士跟怎么样 is the same as 跟那个梅花的骑士，你会以为说他们应该是一样的。
Of course, a quick inspection shows that this is not so. So in fact, the 3 sentences at the beginning of this paragraph are all the same sentence. They're all talking about the same idea. It's just been split up into 3 sentences.
然后第3句就说当然你很快的看一下 a quick inspection shows that 你就会看出来说 this is not so 不是这样子的，不是说这些这个都一样的。
Okay, well, if it's not so, what is it? You might ask yourself, and the next sentence starts to explain. In fact, the slight differences between the face cards have earned them some common nicknames. So we learned there are differences among them. They may seem slight to people, minor at first, but many people who think that they look the same, that all the jacks look the same, all the kings look the same, so some people have developed nicknames. Instead of saying the Jack of Hearts, they have a nickname for it. They make up another name to represent the Jack of Hearts, which is 4 words, make it easy with a nickname.
所以事实上呢 the slight differences 这些细微的差别些微的差别slight 的这个些微的意思，这些些微的差别between the face cards 这些人头牌之间些微的差别呢 have earned them 为他们赢得了一些 some common 很常见的 nicknames 一些外号。
So, for example, there are the one-eyed jacks who are seen in profile, so we only seen one of their eyes. And it's not actually shorter to say one-eyed jack than the jack of hearts, but okay. And they're featured in the spade and heart suits, these one-eyed jacks. And because they're seen in profile. Profile means you see the side of the face.
好，所以 there are 所以例如有什么外号呢？有这个 the one-eyed jacks 这个就是独眼杰克那也有人把它这个称为单眼骑士那 feature 它的特色或者它是在哪2种花色里面有呢 featured in 有黑桃有红心这样的花色那而且他们被看到的时候他们是 which are seen 你看到的是他们 in profile 是你看到的是侧面。
There is also the Suicide King, or the King of Hearts, named for the sword that appears to be piercing his head. He's holding it up, and it's probably behind his head. Now, not all the pictures are the same. So if you buy 2 different companies' decks of 52 cards, they may have different pictures. Don't think that they have to be one way only. But for in some drawings, the King of Hearts is holding a sword up, and the tip of the sword is behind his head, we hope. Otherwise, he's stabbing himself in the head.
But it does look like he's stabbed. Once you see it, you can't unsee it.
Yeah. 好，所以真的看起来真的好像是他头上插了一把剑哈。所以这个地方他讲到说 there is also 有什么呢 the suicide king 哈，这个就是自杀之王啊，那或者是他就是 the king of hearts 就是红心国王。好 named 他被这样子称呼是因为 the sword 有那把剑，那把剑怎么样 that appears 看起来好像是 to be piercing his head 好像是刺穿了他的脑袋一样啊，所以大家叫他自杀之王，好像他把那个剑插到自己脑袋里面去了。
Now, you may have even heard more familiar names for the cards, like David for the King of Spades or Alexander for the King of Clubs.
好，你甚至于可能听过 more familiar names 啊，更熟悉的一些名字啊，对这些卡片更熟悉的名字。例如，你可能听过 David 啊，那他是指这个啊 the King of Spades， 或者是 Alexander 啊，他指的是啊 the King of
Clubs.
Clubs, yeah.
I want to say, though, I don't think that she means, the author means familiar like familiar to us. I think she means familiar means like it's people feel like they're calling the cards like they're old friends.
哦 ，OK， 所以这个 familiar 在这里呢，它其实是指这个就是很熟的啊，不一定说我认识或者怎么样熟悉，而是说这个他们觉得很亲切的那种感觉。
Right.
Yeah， 其实这个 familiar 比较接近亲切的意思。
Well, I'm glad you said that because I was quite the card player in my misspent youth.
Apparently.
And never heard the terms David and Alexander, and I wondered
these card names
who
are
they
very
talking about.
Which is why I'm like, these cannot be familiar names. But if they're like, if the cards are like old familiar friends for you, then of course you're going to call them these familiar names.
好，所以这个地方呢，刚刚为什么我们会想到说，这个地方这个 familiar 应该不是熟悉的意思呢？因为像 Bruce 老师说他这个几百年前年轻的时候呢
I heard that.
啊，他其实有在玩牌，可是他没有听过 David 啊，也没有听过这 Alexander 这样的名字，所以他应该不是说大家都熟悉的，而是亲切的意思。
That's because he's not French.
Maybe. Yeah,
So it's not about the age, it's about the cultural milieu.
OK， 好，所以可能是因为他不是 Bruce 老师不是法国人啊，所以应该跟年纪没关系啊，跟他的国籍有关系。
Indeed, Angela has it right, and the next sentence explains that. This goes back. This means the naming of cards with nicknames. This goes back to an old French custom of naming face cards after royal figures, both real and fictional. There were many, many kings in French history or English history, in Italian history, and so on. And they had their own names, so people may have chosen high-power names to represent high-power cards.
好，所以 this 就是这种做法呢，或者这个状态呢，这个情况呢 goes back 啊，可以回溯到一个 an old French custom 一个古老的法国的这个习俗啊，什么习俗呢？他们会 naming， 他们会这个给这些人头牌取名字，而且是以谁的名字来取呢？以一些 royal figures 一些皇室的人物的名字来取给这些牌取名字。那这些皇室的人物呢？它可能是真实的人物 real 也可能是 fictional 也可能是虚构的人物。
Now, at the time that this was happening, playing cards were a relatively new thing in the world when the French were really into playing cards. And these card sets were all hand-painted. They were all made by hand. They weren't mass-produced. So the names would change from deck to deck depending on how the people perceived the figures in the depicted on the face cards.
好 as 是因为当时的这些playing cards weren't 他们并不是 mass produced 不是大量生产的，所以他们是用手绘的手工制作的。好，所以呢 the names changed 这个名字呢会改变 from deck to deck 好，每一副牌名字都会不一样，因为每一副牌画出来的这个图案都会有点不一样。
However, some names appeared with a certain degree of frequency, like Charlemagne, the King of Hearts, and Lancelot, the Jack of Clubs.
And these were figures that were just deeply revered in the romantic literature of the time. So it makes sense that these would be quite common because they were, I think, real people at one point, but they became these fictional characters.
好，那因为这个查理曼大帝啊，还有这个 Lancelot， 这个都是一些传奇啊故事里面常常看到的名字，所以很多人都知道啊。所以他说 some names 有一些名字呢 appeared 出现，而且是 with a certain degree of frequency， 就它的这个 frequency 就是频率哈，所以这些名字出现的频率还蛮高的哈，有一个相当的频率的意思，这些名字常常出现。
Charlemagne was a historic king. One of the times I was in Europe, my relatives had me go to see where he was. I can't remember where he was born or where he is said to have died and been buried. In Germany, he's known as Karl der Große.
Karl the Larger?
Karl the Great.
Oh, the Great.
Good guess.
He was large, fat, is what you're saying.
Large in fame. And Lancelot, of course, Sir Lancelot is a famous character in British mythology. I actually don't know if he was a real person or not, but Charlemagne was, or Karl der Große, was a real person.
The funny thing about Lancelot is both the British and the French love Lancelot. It's one of the common points in the romantic literature, and one of the very few things the two countries agree on.
Very few.
所以这个查理曼大帝是真有其人啊哈。那 Lancelot 他是这个亚瑟王传奇里面的一个角色哈。那很有趣的一点就是英国人跟法国人都很喜欢这个角色。
So why aren't names associated with the cards today? Why don't we, or even, Bruce, know about the names of these cards?
Yeah, 所以这些名字为什么现在已经没有跟这些卡有所关联呢？有所连接呢？ Why aren't they associated with the cards?
And the answer is the French Revolution.
That's the answer to a lot of things, actually.
In the late 1700s, the poor French public had enough of the rich monarchy, and they revolted.
And it didn't go so well for about 100 years, but after that they finally stabilized.
Maybe a dozen years at most. The revolutionaries controlled everything, but they made a real mess of it. And that's when Napoleon came back in style. Anyway, it brought an end to the monarchy. Now, M-O-N, and then with an O, here it's A-R-C-H, is a root. Mono means one. A-R-C-H refers to rule. So there's one person who makes the rules. And then you have a king or queen as head of your country. And the habit of naming cards after different kings or queens through history died because the monarchy after Napoleon was gone for good.
Yeah, 所以为什么后来没有把这些卡片、这些人头牌跟名字、跟这些贵族的名字放在一起呢？因为法国大革命啊，那 it 就是指法国大革命 ，brought an end to 就是结束了 the monarchy 就是君主政体、君主制度哈。M-O-N 字根是一的意思哈，那这个arc 就是或者 arch 就是 rule 的意思哈，统治或者是规则的意思哈，还有这样的一个习惯，也因为法国大革命而结束了。
Okay, we have 3 questions for you. Take a look at number 1 with us. What led to the expansion of poker to the West? Expansion means the spread.
Yeah, 什么导致了扑克牌扩展至西部呢？
And the answer is B. People looking for gold traveled to the West Coast.
好，答案是 B. 寻找黄金的人们前往美国的西部了。Yeah.
And number 2, which of the following is not true about poker?
好，关于扑克牌，以下哪一项不正确呢？
The answer is B. The game is illegal in certain U.S. states. If only that were true.
Good luck.
所以答案是 B 啊，因为 B 说这款游戏在美国某些州呢是属于非法哈，这个不对的哈，所以并没有这件事情，所以正确答案是 B。
And number 3, which playing card is referred to as the Suicide King?
哪一张纸牌被称为自杀之王啊？各位要从他这里附的这4张牌里面根据它里面叙述找出来正确答案。
Well, we don't know if you can see it very clearly in detail here, but the answer is D. The King of Hearts has the king with the sword raised, and it looks like it's piercing his head, the poor guy, but it isn't.
Yeah， 所以答案应该是 D， 好，因为他手上有一把剑，好像在刺自己的头。
I love that you keep insisting that he's not really suiciding. And number 4, according to the day 2 passage, why was the Jack of Clubs named Lancelot?
根据第2天的文章，为什么梅花 J 这张牌被命名为兰斯洛特呢？
And the answer is C. In France, a long time ago, cards were named after real royals or characters.
好，那答案是 C 啊，在法国呢，纸牌会以真实的王室成员或者是一些虚构的人物来命名。
Okay, we hope you've learned something and enjoyed the program with us, and we invite you to join us anytime, any day here on Ivy English. Until the next time,
Bye-bye.